Wang Chang Hao, Pang Yamin, and welcome to another English version of Diatribes from the Voice of Doom. And now here's your somewhat lingual host, Voice of Doom. Ni hao, Pang Yamin. Start using these words more frequently so I can get used to them. You have to start thinking in the language that you're going to have to use, and if you're immersed in it, it helps. But in the meantime, just keep repeating the phrases, such as Meg Wo Jing, darling. Oh, what was it? It was Meg Wo Jing, Woman Da, Li Shi Jifu, which means America owes us interest payment. It's a good phrase. I'm going to kind of keep that going, and I'm going to say I'm wearing the glasses because I like them. I can't see very good because it's only for reading, but I kind of want to change the look a bit. Wear them all the time, just feel like wearing them. And I wanted to give you a disclaimer that it is a repeat of a diatribe that I did previously, and I didn't save it. I didn't call it an outtake, I just deleted it. Even though I could have published it, I looked at it and realized I said one thing that could raise a bot's eyebrows. And it's nothing bad, it's nothing, advocating one thing or another. It's just that I said something that they could say, yeah, you can't say that. And that's fine. So I just deleted it. Because I can do the same thing all over again and do it better. But at the same time, I said at the beginning of my show, way in the first one, that it was going to be primitive and bad, and that I was never going to, well, not never, but I would just do everything straight through, no retakes and no edits. And I did that, and I've done it. But I'm not going to be carving myself into stone with my own, policies. Because sometimes you just have to do it again, and that's the key to success. So I can't just say, my policy is I will never do anything over. It's a nice shtick, and most of my things are just ad lib, and they are just extraneous babbling. But, I do start over once in a very, very great while. So Woodstock had 15,000 people at the Rio whatever border. I don't even have that written down. Del Rio, I guess, squalor. I have notes, and I'm supposed to put that into some witty sentence, but, Woodstock 15,000. I'm waiting for the music, and there will be music because they're just standing around there, and it's best to have entertainment. So I'm thinking in the next 2 or 3 days we'll be seeing, encampments along the river, and they'll be having little, jamborees. They'll get their instruments. You go across the border back to Mexico and get your equipment and come back and set up a little band. And I'm sure it'll happen. And they say, well, we're dealing with all these people. There's less than there was a few days ago. 20,000 starting a new caravan, from what I understand, in South America. So I guess they just start caravans. Now it's kind of like a Disney ride. Next caravan leaves in 2 weeks, so start paying your graft and start gathering your knapsacks. I don't know how the system works. I know it's a mess, and everybody knows it's a mess. The border doesn't really exist. And if you know about borders, we can go back to the 90s, and we can go to the Berlin Wall. And another example of give them an inch. because when they said you can go back and forth through the Berlin Wall, the Brandenburg Gate, the first thing they did was jump on the wall and start to destroy it. It was a phenomena that was both uplifting and ominous at the same time, because, not ominous because it was bad, it was a very good time in history in a way, because the old totalitarian regimes were falling apart. You got to go back and look at it. I don't want to. But what I'm saying is, once you let people go back and forth willy-nilly anywhere and everywhere, then it's going to be a free-for-all, and it's just going to get more and more broken down with chisels, with pickaxes. They were pickaxing, dancing on the wall and destroying it at the same time. I mean, it was something else to see. Check out some old footage on the YouTube, what have you. You know, Berlin Wall comes down. It was a big deal to us. And it was an example of how once you give people a little bit of leeway, you can go back and forth between both Germanys. Well, we'll just tear the whole damn thing down. So that's going to be happening on our formerly known as a border. And I came up with some. Okay, there's 3 different ideas here. First of all, I discovered ways we can solve this as a country, and it'd be much better than voting, which is going to be outdated. And it's so simple. Everybody has a phone, and they're wasting their time texting themselves or texting whoever, texting strangers, and looking at their picture that they sent and seeing if there's comments. And use the phones and follow the damn buses and see where they're going, because they don't tell us the truth, but they can't stop people from seeing what's happening. No, don't come here and see this because we don't want you to see what we're doing. No, you have phones. People follow the buses, follow the caravans, that follow whoever are carrying them along, and find out where they're going exactly and what they're being done. And then once you find out, you go into that building and go, hey, so what are you guys doing? I mean, are you giving them money, or do you have apartments for them, or do you have some sort of a Shangri-La waiting for these guys? Because I'll get in line too. I'll go over the border and walk back so I can get a free apartment. So who knows what's going on? People had to use their stupid phones and follow them and find out things. That's how we have a that's how we have a country that's run by the people. I'm not going to say democracy. That's an old-fashioned term. Doesn't have any meaning now. So that's one idea. That we have to, I mean, I don't have a phone, and the reasons are myriad. I don't trust them. I don't want to get involved with all that, and I'm addictive to everything. So I would be always on the phone, worse than these millennials. Not on it, just doing stuff, and I wouldn't get anything done. So we figure out how the system works as grassroots people with our phones, and we record it, and we get information. Now, according to one tribe, this whole thing is just a plot to get more Democrats in the red states, because all the immigrants are being shipped off to the red states, and then they're going to eventually get citizenship, and they don't even need citizenship because they're going to not need ID, so they just walk into the voting booth and just ask for a ballot and vote. And all the immigrants will vote for Democrats because that's who gives all the free stuff away. Everybody knows it. That's their theory. And you know, you can expound on that and think it's plausible. But it's so brazen. I mean, it's so obvious that people say, yeah, that's what they're doing, and okay. But still, what happens to them? And the point of the matter is A, there's not going to be an election in November. It's not. There might be primaries, but there's certainly not going to be an election because things will be in the pit by then. We'll be digging ourselves out of the rubble, and we won't have time for elections. or there'll be some sort of a military coup where all the top cream is wiped off and thrown into the dustbin of history. So no election for one thing, and no money is the other thing. How are they going to pay for all this? They're talking about money like it's, I don't know what they're doing. 3.5 trillion? No, that's over 10 years though. I mean, come on. They're just treating money like we can, and I wanted to get into economics in another diatribe, but I will add this since I can add it here. This debt ceiling, what is that? I mean, I started getting into economics a little bit on a macro scale of how the government has ripped us off for decades. That's when I first got into politics and the reality of things. And they keep raising the debt ceiling, and it's like, well, why do you have one? Because you always have to raise it. Well, we're going to shut down the government if they don't. It's just a political football, and that's such a stupid cliche, but it's perfect because depending on who's in power, they can blame each other for shutting down the government. And who gives a shit if the government is shut down? Just keep the buildings open, because those are nice. You don't shut those down first, like some former presidents from Punahou do. Well, the first thing we're going to do is make it tough on tourists that came to D.C. to see the sights. We know the cruelty, and, they think they're subtle. Really ridiculous. But debt ceiling, gets into the money. They don't even print the money. I mean, it's all done electronically. That's going to be the next thing. But give these people resources to spend. I mean, we got my shorts on, I got my knapsack. Well, what else you got? Well, I got my comb, and I got, a few other things in my backpack, but other than that, I got nothing. Well, stay here and we'll feed you, and then we'll feed you, and then we'll continue feeding you, and I guess you'll continue to stay here. And do you know anybody in America? I mean, come on. People have to figure out what is happening to these people. The Afghanis are at least, I mean, half of them are probably terrorists, true, but there's plenty of Afghanis that still need to be brought to America because that's still not out of the way. They're not out of the woods with that. So there's going to be lots of people, and how do they get? They've been uprooted. I'll just use that $50,000 I had stashed away, and then we can relocate in America. That's not even that much. And that's the two reasons why this getting a groundswell of Democrats, thinking like the caliphate, like we think way down the line, like in 20, 30 years, they'll all be Democrat. There's not going to be 20 or 30 years. Forget that. And the third perplexing thing is this AOC character. Why isn't she sobbing her eyes out? Because I would think she would be. Well, she sobs when she sees the horses. Maybe, but the horses is just the last ditch desperation. It's like 2,000 people are crossing the river. Let's get 5 or 6 guys on horseback and just keep riding back and forth and herd them back into the water. It's absurd. I mean, they're trying their best, and I admire their perseverance because most people would just say, forget it. I'm not even going to work tomorrow, and let the border let the whole detention center, whatever, open it up. Let Michael Myers free. So AOC isn't crying. I find that to be impunicity because she was sobbing during the last president's, and by last I mean the final president's tenure, crying her eyes out over kids being ripped from their mother's arms. And I don't see her crying about the kids being thrown over fences. I don't see her crying about the kids being thrown over barbed wire fences in Afghanistan. I don't see her crying about kids being left, toddler in a carriage, and her sister, who's about 4, in the bushes. And I don't see her crying about little kids crying, 5 years old, left by a coyote at the gate, and the camera just happens to catch it, so somebody comes out and gets them. You're 5, you're crying, you don't know what the hell's going on. You thought the person you were with you trusted. Come on. It's humanitarian crisis on a macro and micro. Little, the family blowing up. I don't see her crying about the kid wanting to learn how to drive and all the kids coming to rush out to greet their dad, getting ready for dinner or whatever. Come on. So that's sickening. And then go to a gala ball, meta gala, with my $50,000 gown that says, tax the rich, and the designer is right next to me. She's a tax evader. And the irony, everybody knows it. Nobody cares. They just laugh about it and let it go on instead of saying, wait. I mean, come on. You're a hypocrite of the highest order. You're jaded to the max. Jaded. And the liberal tradition is jaded. I think, classical liberalism is the way to go. It's libertarian and it's the right path. It's not perfect. It's a little bit heartless. But this liberalism is jaded and corrupt and disgusting and condescending and thinking that since we know the truth, we'll do it and we'll get people to follow us any way we can. So I think I got into the how everything is bordering on insanity, and I mean that literally. It's not a play on words. It's insanity at the border. And it's all part of the apocalypse, and I'll explain more about that later. Anyway, I got it in without mentioning the thing that got me in trouble that I wouldn't have gotten in trouble for. So we'll do it again. Good night.